basis because you'd be more actual as there's cycles within the expenses. For example, arenas snow removal where you had peak months and then in the summer you would have obviously less expenses. So basically understanding that it's equal over the 12 months and these expenses are significantly lower, we wouldn't necessarily provide the comment to that on a regular basis. So basically it would be if the expenses were over, if the revenue was under, any fluctuations that were greater at that point.
Okay. I guess I'm all right with the answer. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Director. Any other questions arising from this? Not seeing any, I'll move to item number 6, public presentations, acknowledgements, and I'm not aware of any. Moving to item number 7, new business, legislative services. Who from speak to that, City?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be speaking to one item today, and it's just the policy and bylaw listings. So, Council's aware, at the October 17, 2016 regular council meeting, Council repealed 34 policies that were deemed to be outdated and no longer relevant. As part of the repeal process, Legislative Services was determined to manage a process that would bring forward new policies and set review criteria for existing policies. This EAR is the first step towards the realization of that goal and is meant to provide Council with a high-level overview of the existing policies and bylaws and whether they will be reviewed in the short, medium, or long term. The goal of providing this information is to ensure the Council is aware of the Administration's ongoing efforts in the policy bylaw development area. The Administration will continue to seek Council's guidance in further policy and bylaw development through the strategic planning process.
Thank you, City Clerk. So the list has been provided to Council of the high review priority, medium review, and low review priority, as well as potential policies. Questions, comments from Councilor Dyche?
Your Worship, again, I appreciate getting the list of the policies, and I think this is a really good step, certainly with my own interest in policy. One of the things in looking at other municipalities is that they do have a bylaw for the city manager's description, and we have a manager as well as a deputy in that role as well. Do we have a bylaw currently? Because I don't see it listed in any of the ones we've presented, we certainly don't have a policy on them as well. So I know we have a new MGA coming up at the end of March for approval, so I'm just wondering whether or not there's anything tied to it so that if there are changes in the MGA, the role changes and those sorts of things.
So if you look at the bylaw list, you'll see a designated officers bylaw,
Okay.
and that's where it would be listed.
So it'll have all the job descriptions. Okay.
Well, it would be the bylaw that wouldn't go right down to the job description.
Okay, so
It's a high-level overview, and then the procedures and the job descriptions would be set by Council for the city manager, of course.
so there isn't one specifically then for the city manager?
No, there's
or
no
something?
specific to
Okay.
the city manager. Although the charter does speak to the city manager's duties and responsibilities.
Thank you, City Clerk. Any other questions? Councilor Thorson, Councilor Baker.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship. This must be the word of the day, but I'm just curious what the standard is in terms of ranking these things between high, medium, and low on just management's assessment of what is most important, least important to be reviewed and quickest, that kind of thing.
And you're exactly right, Councilor Thorson. We management ranked how they felt that they should be reviewed. Council certainly has the ability to change those review priorities at any time.
Thank you.
Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Your Worship. What I read too is this is really fine to have this, but I think we've got to find some time to sit down with the council and with senior administration and go through these policies and see if they're right, because some of them aren't brand new. I know I'm one that's been around a while, but I really don't have a handle on all these policies. And the second part was, how are we publishing them for the public to really find them in an easy way on the website or whatever?
We would like to take that.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councilor Baker. Through the process of redeveloping some of the functionality on the website, what we were looking at is bringing those policies more to the forefront so that they are more easily searchable.
perfect, because they are the easiest to find. And maybe it's me.
No, I believe you're speaking on behalf of a lot of people. Councilor Baker, Director, if I can back onto that, would that be, as you mentioned, the work, we're also looking at that, would that be with the new website that we're looking forward to down the road, or will that be with the existing website we have today?
Thank you, Your Worship. That would predominantly be through the redevelopment of the new website. However, with our current provider, we're looking at opportunities to enhance what's already there, so that in the interim, given that transitioning to a website is a much longer term project, what we can do in the immediate term with what we have. Your Worship.
Thank you. So basically, back to you, Director, it's not, I don't want to use the word Band-Aid because it's not a Band-Aid, but we're using what the frame that we have today and the template and try and find the right word for the computer logic, but that the program that's there, that's running our software, there's only so much we can do with it without spending an immense pile of money to try and get it up to date. So that's why it leads to this new programming. That's what we're basically looking at.
Thank you, Your Worship. That would be a really good description. It's trying to avoid the pile of money.
Excellent. Appreciate that as well. Councilor
Sure.
Darcy.
Two other quick things. We see a high priority human resources policy, and I guess some of the things that I know we've had conversations about nepotism, redundancy, are those things that would be built into that human resources policy, or is that, I guess, to be determined? And the second part is that I've talked to a couple of other municipalities around the structure of how bylaws and then policies are organized, and I know we had a bit of a conversation before the meeting started, but the use of protocols, I know we saw in HR, and I've asked other organizations and municipalities, they don't use protocols, they use more admin procedures, which are legal extensions, implying that it's not only a process, but there's a accountability piece that's built in. So I'm not sure where this would go with the discussion, I guess, relative to policy development, but perhaps it's best something we discuss with the governance audit as well. Because I've put the call out to several people who say to use protocols, the answer is no. We have admin procedures, we have policies, and we have bylaws, but zero on protocol.
Okay. I'm not sure what the question was.
Let me get back to the first question then. So in terms of human resources policy, was there any thought given to what goes in it? Is it going to be a generic thing where?
No, yes. So it's every time they develop, any department develops policies, a lot of the advice from council previously is taken into account, and then it goes back right through SLT before it's presented to council.
Okay.
So it's not just a matter of writing a policy and then bringing it to council. There's a lot of back and forth on that. As for the protocol thing, I think what you're speaking of there, when you phone another municipality, you have to be careful of the language sometimes, because people use different language to identify different things. I would say our protocols are very similar to some of those procedures. So
Yeah, I wouldn't dispute that. I'm just saying that I guess my concern in having discussions with them is that protocols are often used as terms of a medical context where you go into emerge, and there's a protocol to follow which focuses on process, whereas an admin procedure would have both a process and a legal outcome. So if there's a particular process you're engaged in, there would be an outcome that would be obliged to follow and follow through on. Very similar to policy, but it's an extension of it where administration would be responsible for carrying it out, and certainly not city council.
right, thus where we were directed by a couple of previous councils to use protocols as opposed to policies on that.
What
So,
were they thinking?
well,
A question that we'll debate and discuss further on. Councilor Torres.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't want to take us too far off topic, but as we were discussing the website briefly, do we have any kind of timeline of what we're looking at as far as that thing actually coming online and us moving forward with it?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Torson. To get a whole new website would have to be a budgeted item, which is not in the 2017 budget. We have put out an RFI, and we've gotten information back from that. Our communications and marketing team will be disseminating that information, bringing it forward to SLT, and there will be some information for council at that point. Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other questions before I look to council for a recommendation? If not, I'll look to council for some direction. There's a recommendation proposed.
I recommend that council receive the current policy and bylaw listing as information.
Thank you, Councilor Thorson, second. Councilor Monroe, any further discussions, comments before I call for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving to item 7.2 in the agenda, community services, I see no items coming forward. So we will move to 7.3, business services. Director Buckley.
Thank you, Your Worship. One item today for council's consideration. Matter at hand is the 2017 computer hardware refresh. Each year, laptops and desktops that are 4 years old are replaced with new equipment through the annual technology refresh project. Equipment that has reached the end of the life cycle is redeployed for training purposes or to staff that require minimal use of the computers for their job duties. Information Systems issued a request for quotation on February 10th, 2017 for desktop computer hardware required for the annual technology refresh project. Consisted of 6 laptops, 21 desktops, memory and hard drive upgrades, as well as peripheral devices. 11 proponents submitted proposals. Upon evaluation of the proposals, CDW was chosen on February 22nd, 2017, based on the criteria in the table below. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Any questions for the Director? Councilor Buckley.
Thank you, Worship. My question revolves around the RFP process around these things. There's 11 companies on here, and the first thing that I noted when I was reviewing all my information was there wasn't one local company that was on this. The reason it kind of caught my attention is because I have had a couple of local companies this week, in the last 10 days, asking me about our RFP process and how they can't find the information, how they don't even know it's out there until they don't see that it's awarded. So my question basically becomes, how can we get some kind of information back around that RFP process? For myself, I'm a shop local guy, and I do business with those that do business with me as a general rule, and I realize that sometimes a local company may not be as competitive for you, and they may be way better than what we have. My question would be, where are they? How come they didn't, or maybe they did, actually submit?
Director?
Thank you, Your Worship. We can certainly bring back the process where these are advertised. For this one in particular, I know we did follow basically our standard procedure. It's on our website. We also use, through I believe it's Alberta Tender, perhaps the general manager could be better to explain exactly where this one in particular was advertised. But we can certainly bring back that information. This is the standard procedure behind the RFP process.
Thank you, Director. Through your worship to the Director. Exactly what I'm looking for. Maybe it's that I'm new and I haven't had the opportunity to learn and see all of these things yet, but it did strike me as something, as there's not one local thing there, and it just happened to be that I had 2 requests about this type of thing the week previous, so to be able to disseminate that information out to everybody is something I think is very important, so that our locals are not listening to the vote on these things.
Thank you, Director. Councilor Thorson.
Thank you. Just maybe as part of a response, and maybe I don't fully understand this either, but I was under the impression that this would fall under the New West Trade Partnership Agreement, in which we would have to follow, which makes it so that you can't use local as one of the items that you grade them on. Is that correct or incorrect on these purchases? Because I was under the understanding if it's not utility-based, then it has to follow the New West Trade Partnership Agreement, which covers BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and now Manitoba.
Director Singh.
Yeah, I can maybe try and answer that, Your Worship, through Councillor Tortzen. Within the West Trade Agreement, there isn't really any specification on not or allowing local to be utilized in a bid. We talked about it at past council meetings when we set up our RFPs. We as in the city administration, the GMs or the project managers that are taking on the project, look at what's important to the project as a whole. So whether that's price-based or experience-based or whatever you're trying to accomplish, which is why, as you can see up there, within this one, the quality of proposal was based on 10% waiting time frame that they could deliver it. Price was 60% waiting. So the development of the RFP takes into consideration what's most important to the project, and it wouldn't matter whether it was local or non-local, they would all be evaluated under that same weighting process. So even if a local was low, if you go through the weighting program or weighting of the RFP and they didn't turn out to be the number one proposal based on the evaluation, based on what we put in the RFP, we'd have to evaluate based on that and move forward with it. So that's something we're looking at through our RFP process and how we can improve going forward and determining how we set that weighting for each individual project.
Thank you, Director Stanley. Back to you, Councilor Thorson.
Thank you, that's a good answer for what I was looking at. My other comment I had was just on the item itself. I know a lot of members of the public would often kind of look at these things as, do we really have to spend the money on that this year? Do we have to do it this year? And I could tell you one thing as far as my understanding of, in my normal role as an accountant, this is the kind of thing where you have to do it this year, because if you don't, you're just deferring an expense to next year that's ultimately going to happen, and you're just risking breakdowns, lost time, inefficiencies. You know, if a computer doesn't work properly and you work at a computer all day, you could lose 40% of your time just dealing with computer issues. So I think that even though maybe people look at the budgetary year as this being a tougher year than others and you know, big potential deficits, I think it's important that we still recognize these things have to happen, otherwise we're just deferring the cost till next year or potentially losing a lot of efficiency within the operations. Thank you.
Councilor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, no, I'm not advocating to say that we should weight a local different than any other. That's not where I'm going with this at all. It just, as I said, I had those couple of different requests of me in the last little while, and to see 11 proposals and not one local proposal there spoke to the fact that these people had talked to me about the fact they couldn't find them. They didn't know where they were. They didn't know how they came out. They didn't know what the timelines were as to when they came out. You know, so I've seen a few of these different things come out, and there hasn't been a local proponent in any of it. So my concern is the communication process. Not to say that we should always not choose local, just the process itself.
Thank you, Councilor Buckingham. Councilor
So,
Patrick.
Your Worship, just a quick question. So do we refresh a quarter of our technology every year? Or is it on cycle? And
Councilor, or Director.
Thank you, through your worship. We have everything that's on a cycle, and just one thing that I would like to add with this year specifically, and in light of the budget constraints, we've actually changed our life cycle for the laptops. Prior to 17, they were actually on a 3-year life cycle. We've extended that to 4. I'm comfortable in doing so. So that was one change that was made this year, and it is an annual replacement program, and it does just depend on the life cycle of the unit.
so, Your Worship, just to follow up then, so do we specify that it's going to be the same particular brand or same guts of equipment every year, so there's consistency and one model to work on for
We
the folks there?
certainly do. For ease internally with servicing and with the team being familiar with that brand, we do provide specifications within the tender process.
Great, thank you.
Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think the original question about local contractors not necessarily knowing about this being out for tender, I think it goes back to Director Todd's point on getting it advertised on the city website, just like we advertise positions to be filled within city council. So a simplified sheet that's easy to bring up once a week or whatever would make sense with what's out there for tender and when it closes can be all part, and I'm sure that will be all part of your new website that you're coming up with. So.
Director, would you like to?
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councilor Baker. We're constantly looking for new things that we can add to the website. Anything, of course, that makes it easier for residents to find information, anything that makes it easier for tender processes, we're always open to that. Your Worship.
Thank you. I'd add to Councilor Baker, maybe that might be something that we could look at on a weekly basis, simply what items and just referring them back to the city website to a different spot, but simply the news release format that goes on to the city website, that we have some control over of what goes on there. Just in general, these are the items that are up for tender this week, either services and or supplies. I think that would give answer some of the inquiries Councillor Buckingham has had, and I'm sure other members of council have had, because I think as council, we feel it's important that, as administration does, that we support the local community, make sure we give them the tools as best as we can. Technology is a wonderful thing, but I've had residents approach me even about other items relating to how do they communicate best, and for those that don't have a computer, things like that, how do we try to address those issues for them as best as we can to keep people in the loop. Now, I would expect businesses would have that ability, but with the computer for sure, but what avenue and what methodology do we use to get the message to them? And I think that's something that look to administration for some advice, and just take it forward from that perspective, because I think more information in this case is better than less.
If I can, Your Worship, just further to that comment, I'm just looking for a little bit of clarity. So the tenders are on our website. We're again certainly looking for streamlined approaches to doing that. Just for clarity, are you looking for something on a weekly basis that we would be initiating in a print format, something that's not online?
I'm thinking, and my personal thought would be, and literally, it would say, this is what's for tender, and it'd just be the points. It wouldn't be any more than the detail, and refer them to that tender page, so that someone, as an example, as a supplier, could easily look at that site and say, oh, there's nothing that jumps out at me, rather than it would create an extra page or an extra bulletin in there, is my personal thought. Now, do we put it into print? That's something that I would say, ask administration to come back to us and say, are we going to add a whole bunch of extra expense? Because we do run an advertising program and a public relations program through the print media. If we could add a small block in that portion, what would it cost, or we can fit it into the budget. I don't want to create extra expense if we can outside, and no more work than we really need to inside, but at the same time give that avenue very clear to people, and clear and simple, I guess, is that perspective. I can use that terminology where they'll say, oh, I see this, okay, the IT catches somebody's attention, they'll defer it to a business. And I can appreciate that some businesses wouldn't be checking the city website on a weekly basis looking for tenders, because this will be the tender, I suspect, for IT this year, as an example, unless there's some other items that come up in the budget.
No, thank you for the clarity, Your Worship. We will certainly engage with our communications and marketing team and have something brought forward to council.
Thank you. Councilor Buckingham.
Yeah, thank you, Worship, through the Director. I think that's exactly it. I think we need to back it up just one step, though. If the administration comes back and says, yeah, we can do that, it's going to take a little bit of time, because you get all these businesses, and some of that always has to fall in local business, of course, to look for these things, there's no doubt. But we need to let them know that this is where they can look, and I think that's the step back we need to take. If it's always going to be there, that's where we're going to do it. If there's a policy procedure around that, so we can then put that out to the public and say, this is where all of our tenders go. And then everybody has the equal opportunity to take a look at that and just make sure it's just in that one spot. But like I say, making sure that people know that is the spot would be my biggest concern.
So administration, thank you, and I think it's education for ourselves as the new council as well, being out with the public, but I think we can work this together and to come up with a great plan that'll answer a lot of questions that we hear. Any other questions or comments? Well, I'll look to council for a recommendation on the award. Councilor Monroe.
That council approves the award of the 2017 computer hardware refresh RFQ to CDW Canada for a cost of $24,395 plus taxes and recycling fees.
Secondary, Councilor Blatchak. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to the agenda of item number 7.4, engineering. 7.4.1, look to the wastewater treatment and to the engineer, Burton.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is in relation to acquiring an owner's engineer for our wastewater treatment facility upgrade. We've been very clear that we need to do something with this treatment facility, and this is where we're at for today. In a bid to comply with the new water security regulations, administration has opted to use the design-build project delivery method to upgrade its current wastewater treatment facility. This approach was chosen because of its advantages over the traditional project approach. The city has decided to use the services of an engineering consultant to act on its behalf as an owner's engineer. The owner's engineer will assist the city in deciding which of the design-build approaches best suits our current needs. Will then prepare a request for qualifications in really narrowing down these design builders down to a select, probably 3 or 4 in this process. Once these design builders have been narrowed down, of course, that's where the next step would be getting into an RFP process. But that's of course contingent on having funding totally in place for the project. The main steps I've attached that in the project timeline as to the next steps in this process, including the owner's engineer and their roles, as well as the ultimate completion of the project. As part of this process, we issued an RFP back in November of 2016 and closed it at the very end of November. A total of four proposals were submitted, and one was dismissed because of it being incomplete. Of the 3 that were reviewed for GHD, ISL Engineering, Land Services, and Morrison Hirschfield, the proposals were evaluated on 5 key criteria. Corporate and qualification and experience, 25%, key staff and qualifications, 35%, project approach, 20%, demonstrated commitment, 5%, cost estimate summary of 15%. These proposals were evaluated based on the criteria and of the total cost of the proposals brought forward. And as such, in the table that's shown, the ultimate scoring came out for ISL Engineering. We have great confidence in ISL. They have helped us greatly in this past few years in moving forward with our wastewater treatment facility side of things. So we have great, they have demonstrated knowledge associated with that and work well with us in that process. One other thing that I want to bring forward on the actual pricing side of things, in that table where it talks about costs of around roughly $1.5 million. What we're asking council today for is approval for about $500,000 or $492,000, but that is only for the award of the first preliminary stage of this process. So it's basically taking us up to that RFP process. Once this project has been awarded, then construction management comes into play, and that's where the extra $900,000 to $1 million would come into play as a future award for ISL to help us in that stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Any questions? Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Worship. I guess when I first read this report, and I'm sure I have the answer, but I want to make sure. We refer to it as wastewater treatment facility upgrade. This is not an upgrade, this is a new plant, right?
So sort of a hybrid, Councilor Baker, in that we're trying to utilize existing equipment as well. So it is new, but it is also using the
But
existing.
for most of it, it's a new wastewater treatment plant.
Majority of the cost is.
For $80 million.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I read that about 3 times, and I thought it probably went.
Okay.
George, if I may speak for moving forward with this motion. It's in order, or would you like a motion first?
I'd like a motion, but I just want to make sure we have if there's any more debate here. I think there's some more debate. I'll come back to you, Councilor, but I think, go ahead, Councilor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to get some clarity, looking back in past agendas, prior years, has ISL done a little bit of work on this already, have they not?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, through the Council Torson. ISL has completed some very preliminary studies for us, including going back to the original concept of using a SAGR system. They evaluated that system and basically came back with a recommendation of, in all reality, don't waste our money, time, and where we're at, and move forward with a mechanical plant. They did a preliminary concept report for us as well, which got us to the actual valuation of $80 million, or very close to that valuation. And that's where we as a city put things on pause, just to kind of, to look at financing for this whole project.
Just to follow up, so how deep into it are we already with ISL for how much we paid just for the preliminary design portion that they already did?
The preliminary design, again, is exactly what that is. It's very, very, very preliminary. They came up with a ideology of using a membrane plant, But as of today, we're not set in stone on a membrane plant. So that's why where we're at in regards to having having ISL associated with helping us moving forward in a plant, not necessarily membrane, but with a certain technology to meet our requirements.
But my question, I guess, is on the mechanical lift type, hold on, let's get the words right. On the, mechanical lifting style, I can't find the words here. Someone help me out quickly?
It's in the mechanical.
Yeah, so just on this style of project, how much have we paid them to date for their design? I'm talking like dollars and cents.
Oh, I'd have to look back and get you that answer. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
I'm just guessing, but $500,000, maybe a little
Oh,
more.
is that it? Well, not that that's it.
Yeah,
That's
it could be more.
substantial
Again,
amount of money.
I'm just taking a stab right now, but I definitely can get those numbers to you.
For some reason in my mind, I thought it was in like the $1.2 million range, but that could be wrong, and I don't have that paper in front of me to say that with confidence, so I was just curious if.
We definitely spent a little money getting to that number design. Yes, we have.
So then the work that they've done to date, does that factor in at all in terms of the RFP process, that they already have preliminary designs in their system, they already have drawings up to a certain point that would have played in their favor as far as awarding them the RFP?
All existing work that has been completed to date will be included in the RFQ process, so that all the proponents will have an understanding of what we've done up to this point in time, and can use into their designs that we bring forward.
Okay, so then when this went out, all the parties had access to that information, so that it wasn't like any specific advantage for one engineering firm over another?
What I'm talking about for the RFQ side of things, the next steps is when we have the owner's engineer on board, and we go through the RFQ process to establish 3 or 4 design build teams. On the RFQ process, that's where we'll make available all the information that we've done up to date, so that they can learn from that, as well as all the work that's been done, but also they can suggest to move forward in other directions as well. Keep in mind that when ISL did that preliminary design of the membrane system, we took that step back. In that step back, we looked at another treatment system as well. So there's 2 key treatment systems on the table as of today, but we're still open to others that may come out of the process as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilor Pegg.
And that was the gist of my question. I just wanted to make sure that ISL did have an open mind on looking at some of these other technologies, or just didn't have more than 2 in mind, because certainly there are a number of different new technologies out there that would be worth looking at. So, no, that's great answer, Terry.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, that's definitely one of the key factors that we're definitely going to make sure that is addressed. Is we're not set on one for sure. We're leaving it open and see what comes back from this. But ISL has that very broad knowledge base that they understand what's out there for treatment systems as well.
And that leads to my question, Chief Engineer Terry. People have asked me, do we not have engineers on staff at the city? As we know, we have engineers that can handle this and this. And my response is, looking for confirmation, is that we do not have the expertise within our house or within house at the City of Lloydminster to design and take this project to the point it's got to go. We're looking to experts outside the city to carry this forward. That's basically the gist of it.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, the treatment of sewage, and actually treatment of any type of even water type scenarios, it's a science, and we're looking for those key experts in the fields to be able to help us and assist us with that. Yeah, we do have engineers on staff, but their knowledge base is limited to certain aspects of things, not into this high level treatment side.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
So is there any idea of looking at this as a possible revenue base with some of the waste, whether it could be used as a byproduct or as biofuel or for heating up additional buildings, that type of thing?
Thank you, Councilor Craig. We're open to anything that comes forward in this process to figure things out. There's always been talk about reuse of our sewage. Once we actually, we bring the quality of our sewage down, there is potential reuse in the industry as well. Those have been examined, but very preliminary. We haven't nailed anything down 100% on that, but there's opportunities there for sure.
I might even speak to that, Councillor, as well, and to add to the engineer's notes that certainly the industry around us, and certainly the oil and gas industry, has expressed an interest in what we're doing and potential that we might be able to offer, because if our wastewater is in a condition that's treated to a point that can be used in industry, I believe there's opportunities. Excuse me. The problem we run into is until we have a product that they can actually bank on and actually physically see, I don't think they'll commit to taking wastewater from the city or looking even at considering a proposal for wastewater from the city until we reach a point downstream. So I think there's some items that aren't measurable today that will certainly have potential, and there'll be a very good potential, and certainly that our economic development people sell that to the industry once that happens. But I think we're going to have to get the wastewater treatment plant in place physically there. The industry will see what we have to offer, the quality of water that we're discharging, and then they can make a business decision based on that kind of thing. So I think there's huge uptake on the backside, but we've got to get to it to get there.
Yes, just on that one, Your Worship, yeah. We have issued an RFI on that basis. So we do have, as Mayor Elmer mentioned, we have an interest from industry. Again, we just only taken it so far because, again, we don't have the product as of yet.
Any other questions?
This is a bit of a bird water, Worship, but I mean, so there's no legal responsibility. Technically, if we treated all the wastewater, we would have to go back into the North Saskatchewan River.
Those are some of the parameters that we definitely have to analyze there, Councillor Dijak, though. But we've done some homework and it looks favorable. But again, we have to look through all the pertinent acts and regulations for that.
Councillor Thorson.
One last question. So I looked back in my notes here and I found that it was November 2014 that ISL was awarded a contract for 1.7 million to do the preliminary design. We don't think we spent that whole 1.7 is more or less what happened?
Yeah, on that one, they were awarded for 1.7, but again, we got to the draft preliminary thing, preliminary design report, and that's where we stopped it. So again, my $500,000 may be low, it may be closer to what you thought about 1.2, but I have to dig into those actuals for you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Baker.
Your Worship, this is a major, what I would call industrial development. The building of this wastewater treatment plant, whether it's $70 million or $80 or $90 million, it's a huge project. And I'm not up to date on engineering fees, but probably you're looking at anywhere between 5-6% to 10% engineering costs to build a plant of this nature. And I stand to be corrected, Director Terry, but this is just the beginning. I would think of the cost. That's like building a car. It isn't all in metal in the doors. It's the engineering and design that's very critical to the end result that we get out of this plant. So the last place we should skip, if you want to call it that, or we want to make sure we get the engineering done right. And I guess we have to come on Director Terry and his team to give us advice. And it's important we start moving ahead, because under these grant programs, we always talk shovel ready. Well, we're not shovel ready if we don't have the design done. And we talk about regional partnerships, and we have a better chance to get grant money, possibly if we work on a regional basis. So the first thing we better do is get shovel ready, so that maybe we can take advantage. Is it for sure? Nothing's for sure in life. But one thing is for sure, in my mind, if we don't start, we'll never get finished. And I'd like to see us move forward with this.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Councillor Thorson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I actually want to reiterate what Councillor Baker is saying, and I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea that I don't think this is first and foremost, and we actually need to really start moving on this if we're going to make any ground and try and actually get a facility built. I was just curious as to how far in we are right now into this process, and whether there was any value in what we had spent so far. Well, I realize there's value in terms of it's got us to know roughly what we're looking to do. Our plans up to date are now more set in stone than they were 2 years ago when that was initially proposed. So I just want to make it clear that I am in favor of moving forward with this item. Thank you.
With that, I'll look to direction from council. I think Councilor Baker, you expressed it.
Your Worship, if I may, I'd like to bring a motion forward that council approve the award of the wastewater treatment facility upgrade owner's engineer to ISL Engineering and Land Services for the sum of $492,853 plus GST, and the mayor and the city clerk be authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents.
Seconder? Councilor Fagan? Any further discussion, questions, or debate? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving to the next item on the agenda is 7.5, and I believe that's operations, and at this point, there's no items coming forward, nothing for strategy, and partnership. Time's not working as well as it should today. 7.7, bylaws. To City Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Today we have the second and third reading of bylaw 8-2017, Family and Community Support Services bylaw. It was provided its first reading on the February 27th council meeting, and it has not been changed at all.
Any questions, comments?
Great, I'll do the reading here.
All right, Councilor Thorson.
Okay, I recommend that bylaw 8-2017, being a bylaw to establish the Family and Community Support Services Advisory Committee, be given a second reading.
Seconder? Councilor Diachuk. Any discussion before I call for the question? Not seeing any. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councilor Thorson.
I recommend that bylaw 8-2017, being a bylaw to establish the Family and Community Support Services Advisory Committee, be given a third reading.
Seconder? Councilor Monroe. Any discussion, questions? If not, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. That moves us to item number 8 on the agenda, the consent agenda. Only one item on the consent agenda. City Clerk, you want to speak to it, or I don't believe we need to? All good? Any questions regarding the item? This being an appointment to peace officer. I'll look to council for recommendation. Councilor Monroe.
The council appoint, is that what I'm reading?
No, it's council approved.
Council approving.
Oh, okay. The council approve the consent agenda.
Seconder? Councilor Franklin. Any discussion? Comments? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Not having any business arising from the consent agenda, I'll move to item number 10, correspondence and information items. City Clerk.
No, Your Worship.
All right. I'll move to item number 11, which is the Mayor, City Manager, Council reports. I'll take the lead if that's all right on this, and say thank you very much to the community and to the city staff and volunteers that made hometown hockey just a great success this past weekend. Weather was not quite as cooperative as we could have had waited a week before or a week after, but I think it was a very successful event. We had a lot of company in town from out of town, and the streets were packed downtown, so I think that was a very positive sign. I've had a lot of good comments, and again, I can't say thank you enough to all the people that made it happen, from the city as well as the volunteers that supported it. There was some job creation with Rogers and the folks there that organized it, so that was good. That's my major event from this weekend. It was very well attended.
I just want to reiterate congratulations out to Lakeland College women's volleyball team, who not only provincial but also national champions in Victoria, and that's the first national championship for the college, and I believe it might also be the first provincial championship as well. So there's certainly a lot of pride over the college for their accomplishment.
Excellent. Any other comments from any of the council? Any items that need to be reported on? Not seeing any. I'll move to any other matters for council's discussion. Last call. I will look to Leo Perry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Today we have media inquiries for yourself, Mayor Elders, Councillor Baker, Councillor Torson, and Councillor Buckingham. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll ask for a recess. Yes, a recess. Councillor Diachak. Motion, second. All in favor of taking a recess? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much.